Happy Friday, everyone. Pull out your Cornell notes that you took in class today, and we're going to solve multi-step equations. Now, when you solve multi-step equations, you're still going to use the multiplicative inverse and the additive inverse. It's just that some of them will take more than 2 steps. Example 1. Example 1 is 11 equals 5 plus m divided by negative 2. Now this equation really is 2 steps, but because it looks complicated here, I decided to include it in the multi-step equations. So I'm going to rewrite it down here so that we can work on it. So 11 equals 5 plus m divided by negative 2. I included this in it because in multi-step because I didn't want you to have 2-step equation overload. So I have this side of the equation that looks complicated because we have math in the numerator here in this fraction, and it looks like it's kind of hard. But really all we need to do is get rid of the fraction, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use the multiplicative inverse, or the opposite operation, and it's telling us to divide by negative 2, so I'm going to multiply by negative 2, and I'll do it on both sides of the equal sign. You know, you have to do whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you do on the other side of the equal sign. So, on this side, I have negative 2 times 11, which will give me negative 22. On this side, since I am multiplying by the denominator, they will cancel out, and what I have left is the numerator. So I can write 5 plus m. Voila! I've gotten rid of the fraction. Now, most of you can recognize what your next step is. I'm going to use the additive inverse, or the opposite operation, to move the 5. Since there's no sign in front of the 5, it's positive, so I'm going to do the opposite and make negative 5. Do it on both sides of the equal sign. So I have negative 22 and negative 5. Since the signs are the same, I can add the two numbers together and keep the sign. 22 plus 5 is 27, and since they're both negative, I can keep the sign as negative 27. 5 minus 5 is 0, and you know by now we don't have to write the 0, so I wrote my equals, and I'm going to bring the m down. The value of m is negative 27. Example 2. Example 2 is 3k minus 5 equals 7k minus 21. Okay, now this looks a little harder because the problem looks longer for one thing, but I noticed that I have variables on both sides of the equal sign. So we can only find the value of k if we have all the variables on one side. So I'm going to move my variables, or my k terms. I'm going to use the additive inverse. I usually move the lower number because that makes it easier. That keeps k over here positive. The only time I move the bigger number is if it's negative. So 3 is positive, so I'm going to do the opposite and make it negative. Now when I add them together, I will get 3k minus 3k, which is 0. And I didn't do anything here, so I'm just going to bring the negative 5 down. Write my equal sign. 7k minus 3k, since the signs are different, we subtract and take the sign of the bigger number. 7 minus 3 is 4, and the bigger number is positive, so it's going to be 4k, positive 4k. And then I'll just bring the rest of the problem down. Now I have it where it looks easier. You can probably recognize now that it's a 2-step equation. I have negative 5 equals 4k minus 21. We want to get the k by itself, so we need to move the 21 and we need to move the 4. Now here it's asking us to it's asking us to subtract 21, so I'm going to add 21. I want to move the number without the variable first. And remember, you have to do it on both sides of the equal sign. So on this side, I get 21 minus 5, which gives me 16. I'll bring the 4k down, and 21 minus 21 is 0, so I don't need to write it. I have it down to one step. I'm going to use the multiplicative inverse or the opposite operation. And since this is 4 times k, I will be dividing, which is the opposite of multiplication. So I will divide 4 on both sides. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Write my equals. The 4 divided by 4 is 1. And we can say it cancels out. And 1 times k is k. So the value of k is 4. Example 3. Example 3, I have 6 times the quantity of r plus 2 plus 6 equals negative 10 plus 2r. Wow, that's long. But you know how to do all of the steps. We'll be doing the multiplicative inverse and the additive inverse. And what's new here is we have parentheses. And you should recognize by now when we have a number or a letter outside of parentheses, we multiply, and we're going to use the distributive property to get rid of the parentheses. Order of operation says parentheses first. I told you to draw lines. This keeps you focused and helps you to remember that you need to multiply the 6 to every term inside the parentheses. So let's multiply. 6 times r is 6r, and 6 times 2 is 12. So I'm going to keep my plus sign and write 12. Now we didn't do anything to this, so we'll just bring it down. And we didn't do anything to this side, so we'll bring that down too. Now, it still looks kind of long. This side looks really long. So I need to find a way to shorten it. And I notice that I have 2 constant terms. Those are terms without variables. And I can combine like terms. So I'm going to combine them. I'll bring down my 6r. 12 plus 6 is 18, and rewrite the rest of the equation. Now I have the equation down to variables on both sides of the equal sign, and if you remember, we have to get them all on one side. So I'm going to move the smaller variable term. I'm going to use the additive inverse or the opposite operation. It's asking me to add 2r, so I'm going to subtract 2r on both sides of the equal sign. When I do, I will get 6 minus 2 equals 4r plus 18 equals negative 10. 2 minus 2 is 0, and if you remember, we don't need to write the 0. So I finally got it down to a 2-step equation. You should recognize what to do now. I always say move the number without the variable first because it makes it easier. We don't want to have 4/18 to work with. So I need to move the 4. I need to move the 18. I will move the 18 first. It's asking me to add, so I will subtract. And I will subtract 18 on both sides. Now, when I do, I will bring the 4r down. 18 minus 18 is 0. So, and I'm not going to write the 0. Negative 10 minus 18 is negative 28. Now I have it down to a 1-step equation. 4 times r equals negative 28. So, since it's asking me to multiply, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide 4 on both sides. I will get R equals 28 divided by 4 is 7. A negative divided by a positive is negative. So the answer is R equals negative 7, or the value of R is negative 7. Here's the last example. We're almost done. Example 4. I have 6 plus 2 times the quantity of 3j minus 2 equals 4 times the quantity of 1 minus j. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't show it to you. There it goes. Now, it is really long, and I notice that I have 2 sets of parentheses, so that means I need to get rid of 2 sets of parentheses. So let's get started. I'm going to rewrite it down here, give myself some room to work with. 6 plus 2 times the quantity of 3j minus 2 equals 4 times the quantity of 1 plus j. So I'll bring the 6 down, and let's do the multiplying. I draw my lines to keep me focused so that I remember I need to multiply both terms. 2 times 3j is 6j, and 2 times a negative 2 is negative 4. Now, let's work with the parentheses on this side. Oh, I didn't need one set of equal signs. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to draw my lines. Keep me focused. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times j is 4j. Now, it's pretty long, so let's see if we can combine like terms. On this side, I have 1j terms and 2 constant terms, so I can combine these and make it smaller. So I have 6 minus 4, which will give me 2, and I can just bring the 6j down. One set of equal signs this time, and I'll just bring this side down because I really haven't done anything there. And there's no like terms to add. So now I have it down to, I have variables on both sides of the equal sign, so that means I need to move them. So I have it on one side. Move the smaller term, and it's asking me to add, so I'm going to subtract 4j on both sides. So let's add. I'll bring the 2 down. 6 minus 4 is 2. And the bigger number is positive, so it's going to be positive 2j equals, I'll bring my 4 down. 4j minus 4j is 0, and we don't need to write the 0. Almost done. I have it down to a 2-step equation. And so we're going to use the multiplicative inverse and the additive inverse to move this 2 and to move this 2. And as I told you, move the number without the variable first. It makes it easier. 2 is positive, so I'm going to do the opposite, or the additive inverse, and I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. 2 minus 2 is 0, and we don't need to write the 0, and I can bring my 2j down. Write my equal sign. 4 minus 2 is 2. One last step to go. I have 2 times j equals 2. And we're going to use the multiplicative inverse, and we're going to divide, or the opposite operation, and we're going to divide by 2. These will cancel out, because you know this makes 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 times j is j. Now here we have it on this side. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So the value of j is 1. Now, an entrance ticket. What can I give you for an entrance ticket? Solve I'm still thinking. Let's see. Solve 14 equals D minus 6 divided by 2. Look at example 1 and follow the same steps as example 1. I'll see you in class on Tuesday. Don't forget your entrance ticket. Bye. Have a nice weekend.